and young people and you. I've only been here 4 months. Only 4 months, so if I come up and speak authoritatively about P&G, I don't think you would believe me. You shouldn't believe me, because many of you are aspiring journalists, so it's good to be critical when people talk, right? But I'm really happy to be here. I made an effort to come here because I really want to understand what the student life is like here and the challenges you face. But it's also World Press Freedom Day. And I think this day is important around the world. This day came into effect about 30 years ago, and over that 30 years, we see that the challenges to the press, to freedom of speech, are greater than ever. We just look around at other countries in the world. What we see when freedom of expression, our ability to share our ideas, our interpretations of the world around us to others, when those rights are limited, we can see several other things also happening at the same time. That there's a consolidation of power, there's a removal of that basic right of the people to decide what kind of government they should have and to voice criticism when things are not going right. And there is a tendency when certain leaders come into power and want to control and reduce people's rights, they often attack the media as that first step of really limiting those rights. And this is something we all have to be extremely aware of and keep an eye on and to protest very carefully when those trends are coming in, when we see this happening around us. Now, the erosion of human rights is something that happens very often very slowly. I mean, it can be very fast, but what we usually see is that societies change slowly, and we give and take a little bit. Okay, so maybe we're reducing the right to do certain things. No longer can we demonstrate safely in public. No longer can we post certain messages on the internet. No longer can we disagree with public leaders, and those erosions happen slowly over time. If we look at Turkey, for example, there's an election coming up, and I have a friend, a student that I met along the way, who participated in a protest 5 years ago in Turkey, a student protest, and then 3 years after that, he was arrested in the middle of the night and taken to prison for nearly 1 year. This is someone who was not actively political or even an avid critic, but he was there in a demonstration, and they found him. Now, this is from what was before a very democratic society, one of the fastest growing, most respected countries in the world. And this changed very quickly. Now, of course, it could change back in another direction, and that really depends on us and how we do our jobs as journalists, as citizens. And I think if we look around the world, what's happened with social media. We all have social media. Everyone here has a phone, or most people have access to a phone. And so, in some ways, we've all become journalists, right? We're all representing the world around us on a daily basis and sharing with others what we think. So that means a certain kind of responsibility we have to communicate effectively, to tell what we see, the truth responsibly, and really to realize that our words matter, even if it's just one post with 30 followers. We're shaping the world around us. See, we have young men, young women here, different backgrounds, and as we grow up, we tend to believe that some people have more credibility to speak than others. Some people are smarter. We say, okay, they're smarter than we are. What do I have to say that's important? But I think really as we go through education, particularly higher education, as we move through life, we realize that we should realize that we all have something very important to say. We have a unique perspective that's only yours, and that you can change the world around you in all kinds of ways, small ways, big ways. But the way we communicate, the way we represent, the way we share on social media is one of those really important ways. So all of you will have an important role in shaping Papua New Guinea's future and the world's future. That's my key message here today. And we must all stand together to combat those forces which want to reduce our right to communicate freely, whether it's targeting newspapers or journalists or politicians. We must all stand together and combat these forces that want to reduce that freedom of media. So those are some key ideas to start with. But you know, in the course of the day, first of all, I need to thank you all for inviting me here, particularly Phil Gibbs, our honorable president here, who has allowed me to come here and took me to dinner last night. It was a very nice evening. And I want to note that this World Press Freedom Day has been in effect for 30 years, and it's no more important today than it ever has been. And even in Papua New Guinea, as we see there are policies, potential policies coming into place that could affect freedom of the media. And it's important to us all to engage on that issue. That the media is the foundation for, as Bill said, it is the basic driver of all human rights. Free speech, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the freedom to say this is not right. This is the driver to protect all human rights. Journalists have a crucial role to play to make sure that we have a free and a transparent media. And we must also take steps to protect journalists. We know that in the since 1993, 1,521 journalists have been killed in the line of duty. And just last year, 221 journalists in 1 year were either killed or detained. So you see the numbers are increasing and the problem is real. So if you're moving into this profession, move carefully, because this is a real threat globally. So, but it really shows that journalists are taking the chances to do the right thing, but with great risk. And as UN, we need to stand by and protect those who have been detained and demand their release. So the theme of this year is shaping a future of human rights, freedom of expression. So this is really the key point. We're all free to say what we need to say, but that comes with a kind of responsibility too, right? We see people around us communicating in the social media and the traditional media in ways which are irresponsible. What does responsible mean? It means trying to get to the heart of the story, doing our research, collecting our facts, making sure that the stories that we write reflect as much as possible the truth. And that's a great responsibility. Of course, we all have a different perspective. It colors our thinking, colors what we see and what we don't see. But ultimately, it's really about having that rigor and discipline to do the homework around the story, to gain a number of perspectives all around, and then come up with a complex assessment of what that reality is like. And that means a lot of work. And that's why this university, this department, is critical for ensuring that we have a team a cohort of journalists in the country that can report responsibly. Because we know that irresponsible reporting creates many problems. It leads to the erosion of the human rights that we all want to protect. Now, several things are also needed to be in place to make sure that we do have freedom of expression in any society. We need a legal, regulatory environment that allows for open, pluralistic media sector to emerge. So we need the right kind of policies and regulations in place. And we need to make sure that once those are in place, they stay in place. Because there are always going to be forces to try to make the change. So that's something we all have to keep an eye on. We need the political will to support the sector. So we need to make sure we elect the right kind of leaders that are going to continue to protect our right to speak freely. And then we need the literacy skills among consumers of knowledge. Now this one is very hard in any society. And I'm from the United States, and I just look around and see, it's amazing how people can see something that's based in no fact, no evidence, and believe that is true. So we as consumers, we have to educate, we have to learn how to read more critically and more carefully what things are presented to us. Because there's a lot of what we call fake, false information, fake news, as Donald Trump has said, in the news. So we have to be very careful what we read. And I think one of the tricks is always looking at the source. Where is this? Is this a credible source? Or is this some service that, we're not quite sure about, we don't know about that? And things that seem incredible and too good to be true are probably not true, generally. So it's good to double check, fact check, and I leave it to all the journalist experts to teach you about that. But we all, as consumers, we need that skill. So when we have these accompanying elements in place, it's really up to you as upcoming journalists to adhere to those ethical standards, professional standards, to make sure that freedom of expression can prevail. Now, one of the challenges we have across Asia is that journalists generally are underpaid and their working conditions are very poor. So this is another factor that when you become journalists, you need to rally together, join unions or associations and represent your interests and make sure that, as much as possible from your end, you can promote better wages and better working conditions for journalists, because that's a necessary condition, because when you have very low wages, then people seek, and this is not a justification, but they seek income through different sources which are inappropriate and lead to a kind of reporting which is often untrue or biased. So we need to make sure that journalists have what they need to do their jobs. Of course, journalists also need the right kind of training, and we need, as a country, as P&G, to invest in universities and in programs that equip journalists and keep supporting them to update their knowledge over their professional course, because none of us stop learning after we graduate from university. We have to keep that learning going throughout our lives to the very end. So we need a system, an educational system, and a profession that supports that. So I want to conclude with just a few key points. First of all, democracy. We all must protect our democratic system. We do have a democracy here. We heard from Bill that P&G does pretty good, does pretty well on the global ranking of the level of freedom of the press. We need to maintain that and even strengthen that. Get up there with the Nordic countries, because that's going to be our basis for addressing all the challenges we see around us. And you know your country better than me, but we do see that this is not a poor country. P&G is not poor. It's one of the wealthier countries in the region, and yet there's so many poor people. There's so much poverty that people don't have the education, the health care, the basic services that they deserve. So as journalists, what do we do? How do we explore the challenges of P&G? Why is it that a political system which is geared often more towards building political coalitions than delivering basic services to remote people? This is a trap that many societies fall into. And I think even leaders in P&G would like to climb their way out of this trap, the political trap. That, we must forge a way forward where the system of governance, the number one priority is delivering services to people. This is our obligation. And you can drive that change. We live in a country where gender equality on another index, the Global Gender Equality Index, P&G is at the very bottom. And I see so many young women here completing degrees. You are at the forefront of fighting for change to protect women's rights freedom from violence, from sorcery-related violence, gender-based violence, freedom to obtain an education, to continue schooling, all the way up to university level. These are rights that, as journalists, we must fight for. And that freedom to express ourselves is the foundation for that, to speak openly on issues. Of course, one could easily fall into a trap of negativity as a journalist or as a development professional, saying, oh, this country just, there's no hope, there's just, it's a failed state, it's going down the tubes, and there's nothing we can do. We're just going to keep reporting on how bad things are. And I think that's a trap that's a dangerous one as well. So I think in our reporting, it's important to always find the heroes of change, the streams in our society, the forces that are improving lives, making a difference, addressing these challenges, poverty, lack of services, gender inequality, environmental change, all these big picture challenges. There are many, many people out there that are making the change. And as journalists, we bring them together and tie them together through common movements that really affect that change. So my very last remark is really to keep the faith that PNG can thrive, can do better. It can do better. It's a wonderful country. There's a great pride around being part of this country. Now let's mobilize that and make the change, make the lives of those around us better, and ensure that PNG is a long, sustainable democracy that delivers for its people well into the future. So a lot of this responsibility falls on young people. You are the hope of PNG, but you need us from the United Nations, all the Transparency International, all of the forces of change, the power in society to back you up and to make sure that you have the freedom and the resources to drive the changes that need to take place. So thank you very much, and I appreciate coming here today. All the best to you, and know that the United Nations stands with you as you move forward